Okay. Well, welcome everyone to the prep webinar for August. My name is Jen Sperduto, and I'm joined by my colleague, Dawn Reinhardt Wood, and we are from the Rutgers Institute for Inpatient Psychiatric Rehabilitation in the Department of Psychiatric Rehabilitation and Counseling Professions. We are presenting today the webinar of Compassion Satisfaction, the Inside Job, presented by Dr. Darla Dixon from the California Department of State Hospitals. And this presentation is sponsored by the New Jersey Departments of Health and Human Services and the Rutgers Institute for Inpatient Psychiatric Rehabilitation. Next slide, Dr. Dixon. So, as always, this is an interactive training. We encourage you to ask questions throughout and participate through the session. You can do that by using the chat box. And you want to change your setting to talk to everyone instead of just hosts and panelists. And that way, everyone can see if you have a question or a discussion answer. You can do that in the chat box or the Q&A. And Dawn and I will be keeping an eye on the chat for any questions that come in. A recording of this webinar will be available on our IPR website tomorrow. Dawn's going to post that link for you. And at the end of the presentation, there'll be a training evaluation in which you can access all of the slides from today's presentation. There's going to be a handout that we're using during the presentation that I'm going to post, but you can also download it from there. And you can complete the survey for a certificate of attendance to today's webinar. Next slide, please. And just a quick disclaimer, the Psychiatric Rehabilitation Education Program, or PrEP webinar, is an online forum for a variety of topics relevant to state psychiatric hospital staff or inpatient staff. And while Rutgers and DBHS and DMHAS are co-sponsors of the program, the PrEP webinars are peer presented, and as such, the content is independently developed by the presenters each month. So the views and opinions expressed in the program are those of the speakers and don't necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities that they represent. Next slide. And as I mentioned, there will be a recording of today's webinar. So we are recording now, so just be mindful of that. Next slide, please. So it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Darla Dixon to the presentation today. Dr. Dixon is a senior psychology specialist who serves as the trauma-informed care supervisor at the Department of State Hospitals in Coalinga. A licensed psychologist since 2015, Dr. Dixon has spent the last decade developing expertise in working with underserved adults, children, and families. She has dedicated her efforts to building resilience and helping our communities to address depression, anxiety, grief, and trauma. And for the past 5 years at DHS Coalinga, Dr. Dixon has shared knowledge about compassion resilience with supervisees and disciplines such as peer support team members, nutrition specialists, rehabilitation therapists, and social workers. So welcome, Dr. Dixon. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to turn it over to you, and we're going to get started.
All right, and we're going to start off with a poll. I'm going to tell you a little bit about a person that I got to work with, and as I'm talking about this person, let us know in the poll if you see yourself or others experiencing what this person experienced. So this was a new employee. They were very, very eager to help and work. And they signed up for lots of groups. And of course, at agencies like ours, when you shine, you shine, and people also notice, and then they provide you with more ways to shine. And so this person was suddenly in contact with a lot of patients who had a lot of heavy traumatic material, and just a lot of like heavy interpersonal interactions. And this individual would go home and find themselves thinking about work, thinking about patients, thinking about whether or not they were doing enough, and just finding themselves really stressed out with all they had to do and not having enough time to do it. The peer group that embraced this particular staff member was also a group that tended to be really good at finding the flaws and the faults in folks like supervisors in the program. And so often the staff was kind of inundated with like complaints. And over time, they started to have difficulty separating the patient stories from their own like psychic experience. They were feeling bad about coming to work, feeling anxious on the way, and getting short with everyone, and kind of starting to question whether or not they were going to be able to do this work. Um, and so, um, do you know this person? Were you this person? Have you seen this person and these symptoms and signs in your supervisees or your supervisors or even your peers? Um, so I'm gonna can we get the results of that poll?
Yeah, I'm just trying to let a couple more people
Oh, sure.
answer the question before I end it, because I have to end it to share it. So
Got it.
about 60% participation right now.
All right. Well, take your time with that. Because the important thing about this is, we all know people who show some of these signs. Um, and we also know people who are able to turn it around. If you recognize the signs and the symptoms. I've had okay, so we have the poll in, and about a third of us are like, no, not familiar. About 20% are like, yes, it was me. About 15% are saying, yes, this is me now. Other folks also recognize it in their supervisees and in their peers. And this is definitely information that we can use across all these settings. And if you're not familiar with this experience, wonderful, wonderful. I hope your environment has a lot of supports involved. And for those of us who are familiar, um, this is all going to be information that you can use to help yourself and others adapt when something like this starts coming up, and to also prevent these symptoms from forming to start with. Um, because when we're looking at this in this example, I was able to have a few conversations with this person. We talked about their perspective, what skills they had, what skills they needed. Um, and we kind of shifted from looking at all these situations that kept coming up as crises to just like, this is an alarm that lets us know that this is important to us and that we have work demands, but we have some choice in how we go about fulfilling those demands. Things like dealing with the anxiety on the drive home, like how to calm your body, and also being okay with being imperfect or having feelings that are not nice. And this employee in particular was able to regain their balance pretty quickly. And honestly, that's not something that they were getting from the agency or something that they would have gotten just relying on like traditional recommendations or waiting for the agency to change. And so this presentation is about uh, creating a skill or harnessing a skill that we all have and that we can use at any point in time. And a lot of the presentations and trainings I've done or attended for compassion satisfaction or compassion fatigue tend to emphasize things like self-care and mindfulness, institutional efforts, organizational efforts, which are all important, but it's not quite the whole picture. And this is something that we can all take with us and use. And so during the course of this presentation, I'm going to talk about the connection between that, making that shift in your perception. So developing that perceptual maturation, and how that's connected to compassion fatigue or compassion satisfaction. We're going to go through the elements of perceptual maturation. And then hopefully we'll also get to practice a couple strategies which you can use to enhance your how you're looking at things, level up how you're seeing the world and your work. I do want to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page about what compassion fatigue is. I'm going to go pretty quickly. Um, and basically, compassion fatigue happens when you have any combination of secondary traumatic stress, moral distress, or burnout. and secondary traumatic stress, those are the physiological signs and symptoms that occur when we're exposed to trauma. So anything that you think of when you think of PTSD, those are the signs and symptoms that you get with secondary traumatic stress, except we're reacting to others' trauma. And so like the hypervigilance that the employee was experiencing, the excessive rumination, like those were all signs of secondary traumatic stress. And then there's the moral distress, which is feeling like your values and your sense of integrity professionally, personally, are not in line and are being violated by the things that you're being asked to do. And sometimes even things like get all these notes done, but also go see these people, and not having enough time to do both can create that sensation in us. And then burnout, and that's basically the idea that we feel like what we're being asked to do, we don't have enough resources or time to take care of those things. So whenever your perception that the demands are outweighing the resources, there's burnout. And if you have a combination of those, you could be vulnerable for compassion fatigue. Compassion satisfaction, on the other hand, is the positive feeling that we get from being in the helping profession, from helping others. It's that good feeling that we get when we see that we're making a contribution and finding meaning in the work that we do. And I am going to emphasize the thing that we all have control over, which is perception. So I'm going to show you a picture right now, and that is of this pot. Imagine you are this pot, right? And so just take a second as you're thinking about this pot and thinking about that water coming in, and just notice your body and notice like how calm you are, how relaxed you are, or how tense you are, wherever you're at. And also now imagine that this water is people and the stress they bring to you, all their problems, all the things that you have to deal with each day. And they're just pouring their problems and their needs into you. And of course, it's overflowing onto our lovely table. But as you think of that, take a moment and just notice how your body feels, and give a rating. So 0 is no distress, you're calm as a cucumber, and 100 is maximum distress. So I'm going to encourage you to put your rating in the chat if you're comfortable with that. Give it a second for people to kind of settle into that idea. All right. And now we're gonna shift a little bit. And now I'm gonna ask you to imagine you're still this teapot. You still have stuff pouring into you, but instead of other people's problems and all the daily stresses, this is actually all the resources that you have to offer. Flowing in from the universe, flowing in from all the things that you do to cultivate your sense of well-being. And of course, it's endless. It's flowing onto the table. Kind of imagine that for a moment, and then I'll give you a moment. And then kind of check in with your body and see what you notice. Where's your level of distress at now? 0, no distress. Again, you're just cool as a cucumber. And 100 is maximum distress. I'll give folks a second to put their ratings in. Yeah, and here's the big question as you're looking at your before and after rating: is there a difference? And if you did notice a difference, what is the difference that you noticed? Often, I know whenever I do this, I usually lose a couple points and become a little bit more relaxed when I'm thinking of it as the resources I have to offer versus the resources people want and need from me. And so when we're talking about shifting how we feel about being at work, about how we feel about the work that we do in particular, perspective can make a huge difference. And there are lots of things that go into increasing your sense of compassion satisfaction and decreasing your sense of compassion fatigue. There's do some clicking here. There's self-regulation, so just basically having a calm body. Often we talk about those coping skills. It's pretty standard request when we're talking about taking care of ourselves. Self-care and revitalization. So this is often, what do you do to improve your feeling of competency? What do you do to restore yourself? How do you rest? How do you get yourself back to where you want to be after dealing with some hard times? There is intentionality, which is doing things with the idea that, you're going to make a difference and kind of aligning your behavior there. And being aware of kind of the things that you're doing kind of step by step. And then, of course, there's having connection and support. If you don't have anyone to talk to, then you might be holding on to all that stuff. So it always is important to be able to have a support system that gets what you're going through, or at least can listen. And then, of course, there's perceptual maturation, which is what we're going to be focusing on today, because hopefully, as maybe some of you experienced, when we are able to level up how we're seeing the world, we can always change how we're feeling and always improve our well-being, no matter what else is going on in the world. So I'll pause for a second here to see if there are any comments in the chat that we should share.
No, just numbers for now.
All right.
A wide range of numbers for both before and afters.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you all for participating in that exercise, and feel free to use it. I use it all the time. I think it's a pretty good way to illustrate how much control we have over ourselves, or influence, I should say. And so, yeah, we're going to focus on perceptual maturation. And just a quick word about it. Sometimes when I use that phrase, people are like, "What is that fancy phrase?" But it really isn't that fancy. It's really the difference between how you're seeing things and how we can improve or mature the way that we look at things. So, for example, actually, before I get into an example, I want to talk about like the fact that I did not make this phrase up. I got it from Dr. Eric Gentry, who does a lot of work helping people increase their compassion and resilience. And so that's where the term comes from. But the concept itself is very intuitive, and I think it's pretty common in our field. Miller and Spring also, in their components for enhancing clinician engagement and reducing trauma, they use a little bit of this concept in their recommendations for how we help our supervisees stave off secondary traumatic stress and compassion fatigue. And another way to think about perceptual maturation is the good old-fashioned cognitive appraisal. We use this all the time, right? When you have someone who's coming to you and they have depression, we usually say, okay, go exercise, but also let's look at how you're looking at things. Let's see how you're appraising the world around you. Any trauma treatment usually has some component of addressing like how you're looking at the world, how you're appraising whether or not you're in danger, what's dangerous, and getting you back to being able to look at this tree here without seeing, bad things or like a fire. And so when we are changing our cognitive appraisals, we're turning alarms into just that. It's just whenever you hear a fire alarm, it could be a fire or it could be a fire drill. And the work that we do, things are more often a fire drill rather than a fire alarm. And that's why folks who are able to look at things from a more problem-focused perspective versus just an emotional perspective, or use avoidance strategies, those are the ones who are able to increase their job satisfaction, decrease their work-related stress. And so that's our goal here. And just as a quick illustration, you know, if I were to tell you today the meeting's canceled, how you feel about that's going to vary, right? Some days it's wonderful that the meeting's canceled and now you have all this extra time. Other days, oh, you really needed to have that meeting, and you were really looking forward to it. If the power goes out, oh no, we can't do our work, right? But on other days, it's great because now you're able to take a break that you maybe wouldn't have taken another time. And so, or when you're chosen to be the lead on a project, again, your perception and how you look at it, as maybe an honor or an opportunity to mentor versus just being given more work. Like those are different ways that we can look at the exact same situation, and all of it comes down to how evolved is our perspective, and how much is our perspective helping us do the work and be satisfied. So I'm gonna go on to the elements that make up perceptual maturation. And these are they are kind of self-explanatory, but I'm going to go into each one. I'm going to ask for the group to kind of identify which ones they might like to do first, so that I can kind of prioritize, because sometimes I can go a little bit long, and if we get short on time, I want to make sure we cover the ones that are most important to you. So if we can get that.
Like, would you like the poll or the handout?
The poll, please.
Okay.
Oh, actually, can we share the handout and then do the poll? Is that an option?
Yeah, of course.
Perfect. Perfect. So while you're receiving the handout and then doing the poll, I'm just going to very, very briefly go over each of these. The first one is danger versus safety, and that's just basically about like turning off the body's alarm system. Choice versus demand, that is, well, looking at things as an option. Like, do you find that you have an option? Can you make an option? There is process versus outcome, and that one is exactly as it sounds. Relinquishing entitlement. A lot of people find that one a lot of fun because I think we all, rightfully so, feel like we deserve compensation and recognition and extras for the things that we do, especially in like systems that are as stressed out as the ones that we work in. But sometimes letting that go can get us a little bit farther faster. And then, of course, there's maintaining integrity, which is like connecting to your own values and finding a way to work those in, and self-validation, which is as it sounds. So I will go through each one of these, but I want to see which ones we should prioritize.
We're only at about 45%, so we'll just give it another 30 seconds or so for you to put your whole response in, and then we'll share.
All right.
It's actually very even right now.
Yeah.
Now we're
And just some of these are on the same slide, so we'll be able to, if any of them are tying that and they're on the same slide, we'll do them together.
Okay, here's some results.
All right. All right, it looks like, oh yeah, those are pretty close. Okay, so it looks like maintaining integrity. And I'm gonna just write that down for myself. And then process, outcome, and then relinquish entitlement. And then we got self-validation. And then choice and demand. Danger, safety. Okay. Thank you for sharing your opinions on that. So let's go down to maintaining integrity. We're gonna skip through the slides a little bit. And also I might jump around as oh no, you get to see all the photos. Okay. So maintaining integrity. Okay. So that one is this. All good. Okay. So the basic idea is most of us have gotten into this field, right? Because we usually have like a mission in life or a set of values that we tend to follow. And then as we were getting trained to be psychologists or social workers or psych techs, we often are also socialized into a code of ethics, right? And sometimes we feel pulled to do our work in the way that work is asking to be done. And the system itself, it always is always going to ask us to do more and more and more, right? And that pull can lead us to feel the need to compromise on our principles or challenge our own sense of self-worth. But if we can just kind of put into perspective that the system is what it is and that is what it does, and we should expect that from that, then we can shift how we're going to operate in that situation so that we can be consistent with our own integrity. And I'll give you an example. So we have, let's say you're someone who can write a hold where you can keep someone in a space confined for whatever reason. And let's say uh, a patient or someone was in a situation where a hold was initiated, right? But it was your unit, but no one consulted you before they initiated the hold, right? And now you're being asked to write the hold and to evaluate the patient, or say you evaluated the patient. That's kind of a problem. I think most of us would say, no, I'm not gonna do that. That's a violation of my ethics. But if your supervisor is telling you, no, 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 just do it, or the folks who initiated the situation are like, no, no, we really need you to do it. It's like, what do you do? Um, and what does it mean if you say no, right? Because we also want to maintain good relationships, because whatever choices they made, they were probably trying to keep people safe, right? And so in that particular situation, looking at what is important to you. And if you're going to say no, like, how do you do that in a way that keeps in line with your values? So like, let's say I would say, no, I'm not going to be able to, write the hold. I can do a note. I can come and assess the patient right now. I can identify what my findings were. And that's what I can do, right? And then being okay with whatever comes after that point, right? But I'm still in line with my values. Or let's say for you were able to see, okay, well, this is how this links into my role here. And so I will identify, gain some collateral information to see what happened from both the patient and from the staff, and render an opinion. And so again, it's about like finding a way to work in a way that's consistent with your ethics, and in a way that meets the goals that are being asked of us. And again, you don't have to do exactly in that situation. Like most people would say, no, I'm not going to write the whole. I think that would be a risk, but I can educate someone about like why that's a risk for me and for everybody. So yeah, so that's kind of maintaining your integrity, kind of accepting that, this is the system that we're in. This is what it asks us to do. And what is it that you need to be able to maintain that, right? That's a high stress situation. You have to be able to be calm and regulated. You have to be able to think clearly. You have to be able to maintain your relationship with the folks that are asking you for whatever it is that they're asking for. And those are all skills that we can always develop, and so to do this one well, it's really helpful to ask, what is important to me, and how can I be creative in managing the demand in my value? And then again, what is my mission in this moment? In that moment, my mission was to ensure everybody was safe without compromising integrity, right? So, are there times that you can think of where you've had your values or your principles out of line with whatever was being asked of you during that moment? And so I'll pause to see if there are any comments on that.
I see an emphatic yes.
Yeah. 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 Any thoughts on things that help or make it challenging to kind of to employ our values creatively and kind of meet both our own mission, stay in line with our own mission, and also address whatever the issue is?
So someone said they had a supervisor ask her to forge her signature. She refused to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, oh, sorry, go ahead. Was there more?
I just said, wow.
Yeah. No, I mean, and and sometimes if we can like just kind of back up and say, okay, let's understand why is this request coming in? And how can I approach whatever it's going to mean? Because sometimes we do have to say no. When we come into our workspaces, we are maintaining like a professional image. And I don't know about you folks, but when I was trained, part of that training was to kind of abandon the parts of me that are deemed less professional or that are, more emotional. And sometimes, like once we've gotten the professionalism down, we can start reintegrating the parts of ourselves that we left behind so that we can appear genuine. So when someone comes up to you and is like, hey, sign this, please, and you're like, oh, I can't. Finding a way to professionally express that can often help people become aware of what they're asking you to do and being able to articulate why it's important to you and what it would mean to either do it or not. Like those are all things that can help reduce that emotional labor of leaving part of us behind because we don't have to anymore. Um, so again, these are all opportunities to strengthen our ability to be tactful, to strengthen our ability to build relationships, to co-regulate, and to kind of rely on our own empathy and compassion so that we can actually accomplish goals and maintain relationships. Um,
Two more
and
comments.
so,
Dr. Dixon, if you want
go ahead.
to. So someone said if you're much younger in age and have less experience, it can be hard to stand your ground in those situations. Another person said they were asked to change documentation back when paper charts were a thing in the remote past.
Yeah.
And someone else said have a close set of supportive peers and colleagues who share ethics and values and talk frustrations through with them offsite. I guess that's one of the factors that help these situations.
For sure. Absolutely. And one of the other things that you folks are getting at is this idea of self-validation, which is the next one. Like especially for our younger mental health professionals. Yeah, like when you are just getting into the field and you have all these seasoned people around you and they're telling you to do something so nonchalantly, you have to be able to connect to who you are and what's important so that you can be confident, right? And you can be okay. But we kind of get trained throughout life, like we should be seeking validation from everybody else. And we should, but there's a limit to that, right? As children, we're like, what did your teacher say? Did you get a good grade? When you're looking at what colleges you got into, like that's a stamp of validation, but we get it from our friends, our parents, our supervisors, and so we're constantly seeking it out. But the issue is when we're always looking for validation from everyone else, then if we don't get it, it's a problem, right? It's a source of threat. Suddenly, everybody is a source of threat. Um, but we can reduce that vulnerability by remembering that happiness does, in fact, come from within. Um, and we have to train ourselves to find our strengths and to indulge in any positive emotions that come up from connecting with those strengths. So for the new person who is maybe feeling a little bit intimidated and knowing that they may not have the power in the situation to change the outcome, but how does it feel to know that you were willing to speak up or that you were able to navigate the situation with some wisdom and make good choices? Um, and so, making sure that you know before you go into a situation, what are my strengths? How am I connected to others? And how can I affirm myself? Or what kind of control do I have, even if I don't have all the answers, or I'm not going to be the one to make the final decision in the situation. So, when we're looking at self-validation, we want to be able to connect, like literally connect. Like, so right now, when you think of your ability to stick to your ethics code or your ability to connect with your peers, like what does that feel like if it's a strength for you or any other strength? So, Yeah, so that's another way to enhance your compassion satisfaction, because um, when we are connected to our values and we can feel them, when we're connected to our own strengths and we see moments of challenge as moments of growth, then we're going to reduce the amount of burnout we feel. We're going to reduce the amount of hyper arousal that turns on when we don't have that. So, all right. So I'm gonna shift to, let me see. We said, what is this? I'm sorry, I made notes to myself and my handwriting is really bad. So that looks like process. All right, so I'm gonna go backwards a little bit in our slide. So pardon me 1 second. Because it wasn't really, yep. Okay. So process versus outcome. I'm gonna go backwards because I wanna talk about these little kitties here. I did spend a lot of time selecting these cats, so it was definitely a process versus outcome situation. Um, so with looking at the process or looking at the outcome, it's very, very easy to, especially when we know that we're going to be graded in some form or fashion, to focus on, did I get the job done, right? And honestly, there are so many things that go into getting the job done that you only have so much control, right? Some outcomes are just going to be beyond your control. Like this PowerPoint is going to be what it was going to be, given the amount of time that I had. And I have to be okay with that, right? Um, but what's important is looking at the present behavior that I'm engaging in as I'm moving towards that outcome. Am I enjoying myself as I'm looking through the many pictures of cats and deciding which one is actually similar enough to include, right? Am I connecting with the experience that I'm hoping that you'll have as we flip through these photos, or as I'm putting together examples of process the outcome, right? Or am I spending a lot of time just kind of ruminating over, um, well, anything really, how imperfect it is, or how stressed I am? And it's very, very easy to do that, especially if we don't give ourselves permission to kind of let go a little bit. And if you do find yourself kind of stuck on, okay, what's the outcome going to be, and is it good enough or not? Another strategy is to engage in something that's like task positive, is the phrase. Um, and that is, well, before it gets task positive, I think even just the basic idea of acknowledging that, hey, this is what I'm doing, and putting a label on it, that often can take a lot of the stress off of what's stopping you from continuing through your process. Um, but if that doesn't work, then doing something that's task positive can help. So that would be finding something that doesn't necessarily reflect you specifically, like finding these, like anyone could have found these pictures, right? Um, and it's goal oriented, right? I have a specific thing in mind that I want to have happen. So there's a, I know it's kind of like the outcome, a mini outcome, but it's on a smaller level. It's not going to be life and death if I don't get it. If you, it can be something that's action oriented, where you're actually doing something, moving your body, engaging, moving things around, then that can also help. And then if it's concrete, like clearly, um, I was going to have 3 photos. That's very concrete. And experiential. Like I feel something when I look at this cat. I hope you guys too, and I hope it's good, because I know some people don't like cats. And experiential, and then specific, right? So if you're stuck on process v outcome, that's kind of what you'd want to do, is knowing that your best, it's going to be good enough, and if it's not, you're going to learn from it. Did you maintain your integrity? Did you enjoy yourself? Did you indulge in the process, right? And if, for example, you're this cat and you're looking at getting out of this tree and you're just like, oh no, am I going to make it or not? Well, you just have to, whoops, sorry, I went a little bit too far back. You got to try, right? And then if you make it, great. And if you don't, then, well, I guess you'll learn. Cats usually land on their feet, and I think we do too. Um, so that's process versus outcome. Um, and then since we have these other two on here, there's also looking at things like, um, sorry, I'm just kind of thinking a little bit in my own head here. When we're looking at like the process and the outcome, often we're looking at whether or not we're going to be able to do the thing, right? And often that I must do it comes from feeling like whatever you're being asked to do is in fact a demand, like it's a requirement. And again, that goes back to that training. Like when your parents said, "Hey, clean your room." Um, Usually if you didn't, something happened and you're like, "Oh, I better clean my room." But even in that process, you still made a choice. You made a series of choices um, about whether you're going to do it, what the benefits were, what the risks were, um, how well you were going to be able to do it, and what you needed to do it. And so you kind of weighed your ability to fulfill the request that came through, and then you acted from there. And so really we have to be able to find the choice in what we do. Little orange tabby cat could have walked down the tree, right? But he chose to jump because that's what was within his ability. Um, my colleague that I spoke with at the beginning, um, sh they felt like they had to have like an answer, but then they gave themselves permission to just be a learner, right? And that was a choice. And so when someone says, "Hey, I need you to write these 3 lesson plans by Friday," you're gonna try, um, and you're gonna adapt and adjust as you need to if that's a request that you can do, right? And if you can't, then you're probably gonna go and say, "Hey, I can only do 2," or I can only see 3 clients, or I can see 5 clients if I only see them for half an hour. You'll make the adjustments, really. Um, and so whenever someone is asking you to do something or telling you to do something, it's always, always a request. And it's about being able to find that choice. Um, and that also kind of relates to the stories that we tell ourselves. um, and having a conscious narrative of what am I saying about what's happening, or what happened before, what's happening right now, and what's going to happen. So um, if I had a actually today I had a patient stop me and say, "Hey, I need you to talk to my team to convince them to help them hear me," right? And I felt like that was I know they can't make demands, but it felt like a demand, right? Like, "Help me, save me right now," right? Um, and prior to that, the story in my mind was, okay, well, who am I? I am the TIC senior psychologist. I help people be all TIC, which means listening to patients, and he's not being listened to. It's my job now, right? And if I go to this team and I'm like, "Aha, I'm here and you're supposed to listen to me," and that's the story. And if I succeed, then I'm a winner. Then that's one story. But if I don't succeed, what's going to happen to how I'm feeling about myself, how I'm feeling about the request itself? It's gonna cause a problem. But if I'm looking at, okay, do I have an option here, and what options do I have? And yes, I am the TIC senior psychologist, but I have to look at how can I help this person in a way that empowers them, empowers me, empowers the team, right? So like really paying attention to what's the story you're telling yourself about the before, during, and after. And in this case, I I looked at the story I was telling myself, which was, oh, I have to change his situation right now, and I'm like, but I can't, I can't must anything, right? And so what I did was I said I will um, forward the concern to your team and kind of put it in some context and see what comes out of that. And that feels a lot better for me, and will help me help him in the future and help other patients like him in the future. So, um, yeah, we always have a choice, and we will always adapt to whatever the outcome is, and we have to look and see how we're going to be moving through these requests. And then, of course, for danger versus safety, that means that we also have to um, notice our bodies, and notice when we're saying, "Okay, this is a demand," because that's going to activate ourselves. And honestly, someone wanting more than you have is not dangerous, even though we treat it like it is, and our bodies respond like it is. And so, like, just having regular strategies to calm your body, to approach things with a wise mind. Like that's that's the approach for that one in particular. So I'm gonna try to capture this last one, which is relinquishing entitlements. It is a favorite of mine. It was kind of middle of the pack for everybody. Um, Actually, I'm gonna go back and cover one more concept real fast for danger versus safety, and also for choice versus demand. Sometimes there's like an assumption that we can't handle emotions, right? We're gonna be too frustrated, we're gonna be too upset. But emotions they're not dangerous either. They're information for us, and so kind of being able to make friends with your feelings and use them, that's another way to actually practice moving into a stance of safety, moving into a stance of choice, and moving into a stance of process. Okay, and now relinquishing entitlement.
And Dr.
Uh,
D, before you start that slide, I
yeah.
just want to give you a quick time check. It's 3:45. You're doing great.
All right.
Requested.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Thank you for that time check. So yeah, and this is the essentially the last element of the uh, the perceptual maturation. And that is, not looking at ourselves as victims of the work that we do. Um, I know for sure I had to interview to be in the position that I'm in. I'm not sure if anyone here didn't have to do that. Nope. I'm making an assumption here, right? Um, but I understand it's super easy when especially if burnout is starting to set in, to feel like we've sacrificed so much and that we should get something for that sacrifice, right? And there's benefits to being in that position. Like if I feel like my work is always asking me to do 20 presentations, see 50 patients, and do way more, then it's easy for me when I'm like, I don't feel like it today, to say, well, I already put in all this work last week, and that's all you're getting from me. That's all you deserve because you didn't recognize me, right? But it also doesn't help me become more efficient at what I do. It doesn't help me, um, uh, seek out ways to improve my condition or my position or my agency. And doesn't make me feel good about myself, right? So, knowing that we do in fact have a choice to be in our profession, we have a choice to be at the very specific places that we work at. We have a choice to be in our specific positions, and we also have a choice in how we carry out the things that we're asked to do. And it really is much more empowering to own that, to reconnect with why you're doing it and rekindle that passion, and to look at every opportunity when that feeling of entitlement comes up, to say, okay, how can I build myself up? How can I practice new skills? How can I become a better professional? Um, like that's the task when we're talking about relinquishing entitlement. And again, like looking at that story that we're telling ourselves, like that's super important. Um, and so are we looking at it as a problem solving orientation? Is it an opportunity to master some maybe foundational skills? I know for me, um, I tend to feel more entitled when I'm tired. When I'm tired, and if you ask me then to go listen to somebody, um, I'm like, I can't. I absolutely cannot. And really, what that highlights for me is that I can grow a little bit in terms of being able to maintain my sense of empathy and maintain my ability, my capacity for listening. And it doesn't mean that, I have to be the most empathic person always and go to every single call that I'm asked to do. But if I improve a little bit, the next time someone asks me and I'm already feeling up to here, then I'm not going to be like outside of my own window of tolerance, outside of my own comfort, because I will have improved a little bit. So, yeah, it's important to be able to let go of that entitlement and build up a story that allows us to grow. Are there times that you can think of where you either did or could have or maybe didn't relinquish entitlement, or folks that you think that come to mind where that tends to be a main concern? And I'll let you put those comments in the chat. And I just want to kind of wrap things up where these are these elements, sorry, here we go. There we go. These elements are different steps that you can take to shift those times in your day, in your life. And if you're able to look at how you're perceiving things and kind of evolve it a little bit, then you are going to be less likely to um, uh, be in a state of hyper arousal and feeling like everything's a threat. You are going to be much more connected to the values and connected to how your own decision making and actions fulfill your own mission for why you got involved in this field. And then you're also going to be able to look at a request and look at the resources that you have and be okay with just being able to do what you can do. And it is really important to not just take these things and put them in your back pocket, but you want to use them. Like this is a proactive plan. And you can also use it to help others. And so I would encourage you to take that front page of the handout and the second page as well and look at the situations where maybe you've leaned towards a perspective that will bring you down a little bit and look at how you might be able to shift it. And if there are reminders that you can use to assist you in making that shift, then let's get them out there. And I guess that would be a question for the chat. Like, how can you remind yourself to use some of these elements, or how can you use this to help others? And that's my final item for the chat, my final comment, and I'm ready for any points of discussion that folks may have.
Just a reminder, you can type your answers into the chat box or the Q&A box if you have any questions for Dr. Dixon. Please feel free. We have about 9 minutes left.
We have one individual who stated that victimizing themselves at work is basically synonymous with harboring resentment. And then that resentment tends to, excuse me, expend more energy, creating more fatigue and disrupting relationships with colleagues.
Yes, it absolutely does. I mean, our ability to build up those relationships, I mean, I think that it will for sure like if you're always on edge, or always looking at how much we can't do, then you're also going to be looking at like how much other folks are or aren't helping you, right? But if our goal is to maybe despite there being so much, see how we can connect with each other anyway, then we're gonna be more we're gonna build up more supportive networks. We're gonna have better social connections, and we're gonna feel better about ourselves, better about the work that we do. Yeah.
And Samantha asks, how would you teach students or interns when they come in about all of this? I feel like if we foster these principles, it can help people stay in the field longer when older peers engage in problematic behaviors.
Absolutely. So over here at Coalinga State Hospital, I've had the privilege of introducing some of these topics to the incoming clinicians each year. And even just having the basic conversation of here are some different things that come up, and let's look at how we're looking at the situation. Like that, they seem to find that pretty valuable. You can even take, one concept a week and take it into supervision and have those discussions. Like, because research does show that when you have a supervisor who is talking to you about these things and helping you explore your own resiliency, you do increase your compassion satisfaction, which can protect against compassion fatigue. So finding ways to work it into your conversation, formally, informally, can help interns and students and even staff that have been in the field for a long time.
And we have another comment. Lauren says that he loves the idea that others wanting more than you can give is not dangerous. but can certainly elicit a stress response.
No, it absolutely can. And when we recognize that, then we can take steps to turn the volume down on the alarm system. Like I know last week I had multiple presentations to do this week, and I had to tell myself, okay, hold on. And when I started to feel that tension in my neck, it's a little bit late, but it's still there. Can I just take a second to relax my body? And can I just take a second to know it's whatever I produce, I'm skilled enough that this is going to be okay. And again, if not, I'm going to learn and I'm going to do better. Yeah.
And Margaret states that it sounds like compassion fatigue can come less from giving compassion than from feeling victimized by others who may have needs or demands. It is less about giving than giving reluctantly. Or
Yeah.
is it less about giving than giving reluctantly?
Yeah, I mean, I think the phrase compassion fatigue, like the field itself, like psychology, social psychology, and social work, they're the ones who tend to define compassion fatigue. Um, and the original idea essentially was that you get tired of engaging, basically. But since, it started off, in the 60s, it's kind of expanded to looking at those three components of, am I having a stress reaction to trauma? Am I feeling like there's too much that I'm being asked to give, and am I in line with my own values or not? And any one of those being out of whack can affect how much you are able to like really engage in the work that we do. Um, and so it can look different for different people. So for some folks, it is like a withdrawal of everything. For other people, it's a cynicism about the work. But compassion satisfaction, which oddly enough looks like it's kind of like a separate concept in terms of how we experience. Um, like you can have high satisfaction and still have like an average amount of compassion fatigue because it's kind of normal in our field, right? Um, so I would say that it looks different, and it basically kind of depends on who you are. But the big idea is um, uh, take care of yourself in these different ways, so that whatever you're being asked to do or whatever's being asked of you can feel good while you're doing it. Mhm.
And just one more comment from April. Great presentation, Dr. Dixon. I feel this would be a very beneficial topic for my new staff, as well as seasoned staff who may really need to hear this.
Yeah, and one of the things I really like about Eric Gentry and Miller and Spring is that these are very, very practical strategies. And so I would encourage you, if you're able to, look up those two clinicians, and their materials, because like I said, it's very, very practical, and anybody can use that at any stage. And so I think also you'll find in the references some of their information, and then also some of the resources like the Procool. You can do an assessment of yourself in terms of compassion fatigue, compassion satisfaction, the Advancing Adult Compassion and Resilience. They have a whole toolkit that you can use to help people learn about this topic. And then, of course, William and still they have a very nice workbook for reducing compassion fatigue, secondary traumatic stress, and burnout. And yeah. Mhm.
Perfect. All right, well, we're just about out of time. If you haven't noticed, Dawn did post the link to the training evaluation. As I mentioned earlier, the training evaluation will give you all of today's handouts, the slides, and a certificate of attendance. So don't forget to head on over there and fill out the training survey. If you don't get a chance to do it today, I will send out a follow-up email in the morning, so you'll have that information. But I want to thank you, Dr. Dixon, for a really great and inspiring presentation. And somebody else said empowering. So yeah,
Yeah.
this was really great. So thank you for being with us today. Thank you all for coming today, especially the end of summer. And we'll see you again in September. I believe the September webinar will be on, I just have my calendar open and now I lost it, on September 17th. So it's always the third Tuesday of the month. And so be on the lookout for registration information for next month's webinar. And thank you all for coming today. Take care. Bye-bye.